Hi, Tony from Matt Talking Remote back today, and we've got a great guest on, Steph BySouth. How are you today?
I'm excellent. Thank you, Tony. It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's brilliant to have you on. Just remember, if you're listening, make sure you hit the like, subscribe so you can see more people like Steph. And of course, join us at remoteaf.co. Click the community button. Join a like-minded community, fantastic people having conversations about all the things we'll talk about today. And of course, our Teamcraft newsletter, which you can find in the show notes below. Having said that, Steph, it might be great if you let everybody know who you are, because I know you quite well, but some may not.
Thank you, Tony. Hello, everyone, and good evening in Australia, good afternoon, good night in the rest of the world. My name's Steph BySouth. I am an outcome-driven leader, and it's something that I've been trying to master throughout my entire career. Originally started off in the fast growth global platform era. So a few people may know realestate.com.au here in Australia. Part of the international team that bought online platforms, integrated them into REA Group. Left there, went and worked with a great venture capital team. And everything that we did was about buying businesses, investing in fast growth technology, and redesigning the product catalogs. So a lot of it was all around how do we make great outcomes, great products, do it in a really cost-effective way because you're using other people's money, and how do we do it really well, have fun along the way. And then I moved into agile consultancy, and I've been an agilist probably for a good decade now, mainly based in Melbourne, East Coast Australia. We're helping enterprises essentially take advantage of lean startup, outcome-driven innovation, which is now jobs to be done, and also lean UX, which is also an outcome-orientated practice, and business agility transformation strategy. So just a few things in the suite, and I'm still curious.
Did you miss anything? No, you got them all in the catalogue.
Yeah, and I love to have fun. I love a good laugh. I don't think there's enough laughing in the workplace. Yeah. When you're smart, you don't need to be serious. You can really enjoy it.
Fantastic. And the great thing about working with Steph, I can tell you, or presenting with Steph, is there are always laughs taken from me. So we're going to have some fun today. The reason I got Steph on is Steph and I have been talking a bit over the last few weeks, and I'd seen some things she was doing around the outcome-driven leader, and it really piqued my interest because those who watch the cast regularly know that leadership's one of those things that I do talk about a lot. And we had some very similar conversations about our hypothesis that agile leadership's not good enough for business agility. It's really just the baseline. So I think, Steph, lovely to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely been a progress in the body of knowledge around agile leadership. And that's definitely been around in the areas of leading agile delivery teams. How do we do, say, scaled agile framework? They've got a body of knowledge about lifting leadership capabilities that's there. And then also in terms of complementary methodologies and UX, product management, there's a movement that's happening there towards outcome-driven product management. I think you had Jeff on who was talking about his product strategy theories and the practicalities of using that. And then there's also a big movement around organizational design, because it's a key factor in creating business agility, about creating value streams and how do you connect those value streams to a shared alliance and purpose. And so there's all these wonderful things that's happening, but we just had the Business Agility Institute release the latest 2023 report. And one of the top challenges, in fact, two of the top challenges still came out as leadership capability, leadership change management capability. And in terms of that being a high challenge to the business successfully sustaining business agility or being able to expand out agile delivery success into the broader organization. Here's the thing, the State of Agile report, probably, I think, even 10, 15 years ago, called out the same thing. Yeah. Now, Agile is a pretty new methodology. And so over that time, we haven't progressed our ability to change the frozen middle management, we haven't necessarily solved the problems that business managers are needing to address today. And if we as an agile practice, methodology and movement aren't helping the people solve this, or I don't know, do we need to solve it? Is it our responsibility? I'm not too sure. But I definitely know that there are ways that managers can leverage agile practices. I definitely know there's amazing business strategies that are outcome driven that are out there. And we see it in fast growth unicorn tech companies and startups, impact investment, but we're not seeing it in our investments. There's an opportunity from this mediocrity. A job, I've got to make sure other people are doing their job, to heads up, becoming outcome and do what we hire them to do, and we can get into the detail of that. So there's a frontier which I think we can now step into. Yeah. Early days.
I think there's my thoughts and impression of that, as you and I have chatted, is that, you know, I think leaders get a bit of a bum rap over the last period of time, and you know, they're really tired of being told they have to be an agile leader. They're also really being tired of being told they have to be a servant leader. Like, no one wants to be told they're a servant. I think it's one of the worst languages that we've ever come across, right? I'm no servant. I don't even pick up after my, you know, kids, right? So why would I do that kind of thing for my people? It's more about being able to lead in a way that leverages agility, as you said. So I think that's a really good point. I like this whole focus of outcome-driven leader being the bridge between, you know, teams and management and the way we work. Talk to me a bit more about that, Steph.
Yeah, definitely. Well, first of all, an outcome-driven leader is someone who is objective-focused, they're action-orientated, and they have this energy that creates momentum growing practice, which is all focused around bringing people together to accomplish a great impact. So it's a bit of a mouthful: objective focus, action orientated, momentum growing practice. And it's key around bringing people together. And the thing that's around those kind of 4 pillars of being outcome driven is that there is no room for your ego in there. And this is one of the things where leadership improvement programs or high performance leadership expectations fail, is a lot of them focus around leadership style. But the thing about a leadership style is styles are as personal and as variable as the places we're born, the clothes we like. And the other thing, if your high performance is dependent on the style of leader in your organization, then it's more likely that you're going to hire someone with a style like yours and your social preferences, because it's easier for you to know and trust them. Yep. And then we get this social profiling and hiring, and we don't necessarily get innovative, different leaders coming in. So that's the first thing. And if we think about leadership styles, we talk about, it could be directive, you could have a command and control, you know, they could be quiet, they could be an extrovert style, they could be an energetic, or are they inspirational? The thing is that we need to make leadership agnostic leader in itself, because how great that leader is determines how great people, and also the practice of the impact is. And this isn't something that's new, but it's not necessarily something that businesses are investing in supporting managers to become high-performing leaders.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's something that we see. Look, I put my hand up and say I'm guilty, right? And in my early years of the agile journey or agility journey, you know, I was one of those people that say the frozen middle layer, etc. But, you know, actually what I've come to understand over the last 20 years of doing this is it's the systems that have been set up, all the patterns of work and the systems of work and the way we govern the whole system around that that's created either that moment where they actually work in that way, or it's enabled them to have to actually figure out how to work in a way that worked the system, right? And organizations haven't invested in helping them improve.
Yeah.
So for me, I think we've been giving leaders a bit of a bum rap, and if anyone, agile coaches or agilists out there, want to have a look.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about management is that when you're a manager, you've got expectations from the top and you've got expectations from your team. And the same expectations that we have in a team to have psychological safety, the conditions, the resources, the tools, and the permission in order to do our job as well. We don't necessarily get that. And even the executive, you're still reporting into a shareholder. And being a lot of management that we're not getting the translation, not getting the visibility and the communication down on the ground, because it goes through that person who has to be the manager that it's their fault. But the unfortunate thing is those managers often get hired into a system, an organizational structure, and something that's come before them, which they can't necessarily solve themselves, which is why systems thinking in your transformation programs is really quite important. It's why with organizational design, there's a big move towards value stream that's happening, outcome driven in that as well. So there is work that's happening to solve the problems around the manager to free them up to be able to do their jobs better. So we just can't, and this is what I want to understand. So if there's people out there, I really want to hear, when you say leadership is the problem, well, what are they actually struggling to get done? What in their job do they have to do that they're not doing well, or they could get some support for? Like, what is the job you expect your leader to do for your team that they're struggling with? And if you could have something for them, what would it be? Like, I really want to hear, because every time I look at these agility reports and we go, leadership's a problem, it's like, well, what's underneath that? And who's looking at the 5 whys underneath it? And I want to do that. So if you're interested or you have problems, do please reach out. And I think we can start to explore it a bit better.
Yeah.
Because not only does it help a business, it'll help the teams.
It's interesting what you just said. Piqued my interest there is you just described transformation and changing the systems around the leaders. But who's helping the leaders to understand and change with the system, right? That's my point there, is they're being put into a situation where they have to manage a system that's changed. So, whenever you put agility in, by rote, it disseminates control. I've said that many times on the show, right? That's what agility is meant to do. However, if you don't have the systems that allow you to govern it in a better way, and when I talk about govern, I don't mean PMOs and projects, governing the system in terms of leading it, etc. If you don't change those systems, the only lever that's left to pull is command. And therefore, that's what people revert to because it's their best known lever.
Yes, that's true. It is very true. But then command is something that you can direct. I can command, and this is the thing about learning to become an outcome-driven leader, is that you don't necessarily instruct a person what to do, but I will command the standard by which I expect it to be done.
Yeah.
And it's the nuance and the difference that's in that. And it's the same misinterpretation around directorship. Like, being a good leader is directing people down a safe path. Being a good leader is understanding and testing the best strategy and direction that you go into before the team even executes on that roadmap. Like, you're out there at the frontier ahead of the roadmap in order to keep the pathway safe for them. And that's probably the difference, is moving away from being an instruction administrative manager to being outcome orientated. It allows this catalyst of innovation in a number of different ways. One, because you spend more time defining the interacting structures, the systems, the standards, the success factors, rather than telling the team how to do the job. And in fact, you kind of step back and go, you know what? I hired you because you were better than the person in line behind you. I hired you because you've done this before. You're an expert. You go away and do the job that I hired you to do, and I will give you an environment that will allow you to improve it. And then what happens is you get this amazing catalyst and contribution of people doing their best every day in the workplace, because you know that your best as a manager is to automate administration, to protect the team from all of those interferences going on. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's you're thinking about. You got a bit of delay then. It was Steph on pause for a second. So, well, one of those things here, and you and I chat again. We often have these chats. I was talking to you about the thoughts that I have around leadership and having written it into a book. Shameless plug. We'll leave that bit by the side. But leadership for me is like a conductor. You want to be conducive. So a conductor doesn't actually stick their hands into the work and do the work. They've got very talented, wonderful human beings who know how to play their instruments. It's how they bring them together and how they direct them to work in the same method of travel, right? And if you ever watch a conductor, having written about it recently, there's some great videos out there where they explain, you can see them just do a little like that, and that's actually saying, hey, that was a bum note. So they're actually intervening in a way that's allowing them to understand the direction of travel, which is exactly leading them down that safe path, as you said, right?
Yeah, very much so. And that's the thing about being outcome orientated, because you're not focused necessarily on the output and the details that's in there. Your role that you play is very much about motivating people. So how do I pull them towards a shared purpose? So in terms of, if you are a conductor and you're orchestrating a piece, how do I pull that energy alive to connect with the audience? Then being supportive to the needs, and that's the needs of the people in your team, the needs of the business, and the needs of the customer. So being in a management role and planning how you can better serve people's needs, super critical. The other thing is trust. When you come down to it and you look at all the studies that's out there, the Gallup studies, the agility ones, there's actually the International Trust Study,
yes.
All of them, and that's out there. Frontier leadership, high-performing leadership, trust is such a critical factor. And so being able to create, manage, facilitate trust, both up and down vertically through the organisation, is critical. Being able to push people along, and let's face it, we do need to nudge people along towards certain directions. Sometimes you need to encourage people to do things that they don't necessarily, and I think encouragement is a huge part of helping people perform well. Encourage people to step out of comfort zones, comfortability zones, but also protecting your team is a key factor around being outcome driven, because you actually need to protect the priority, you need to protect the mission, and you do need to protect the people's well-being. And so the well-being and the health of your people, the product, and everything else depends on your ability to focus, to defend, to distract, all of those things. So it's a really interesting, you don't just command, you don't just instruct. And the way that you do it, there's different ways. Like you and I have talked about intent-based leadership, which David Marquette wrote about in Turn the Ship Around. There's a really interesting thing when you learn about intent-based leadership. But what actually happens in that moment is, as a leader, he's giving people permission to do their best. Go in this situation. How many people permission to go and do something, and how many people do it in a way? Here's the parameters. You know, like if you go and do something and it goes too far away, becomes too risky, come get me. I'm your advocate. I'm your mentor. I'll help you get through the void. If you don't necessarily give people a big thing around being an outcome-driven leader.
Yeah, no, I like the Stephen Bungay thought about that too, because he sort of wrote about it long before David, although David, definitely has crystallized it. But, Stephen Bungay also said the facet of that is leading with intent.
Yes.
And that leading with intent is how you model your leading. How do you lead change? How do you lead people? And I think one of the things you talk about is breaking that opaque ceiling down between strategic intent and the work. Which I think is, I'm really interested in your thoughts on that.
Yeah, intention isn't enough. Intention is a good start. Strategic intent or a general's intent is actually a thing like that David Marquette used, but it's only a measure of whether you're a good leader or you're going to actually from the impact that you make. And so you can start with all sorts of good intentions, but if you don't focus on the impact that you have on people, the business, and your customer, then good intentions are actually quite worthless. And I think that's actually really important to call out. I have a terrible metaphor, or not a popular metaphor, but mind you, Jez Humboldt talks about it in his book around continuous delivery. And he talks about and how setting an intent and giving people allows rapid making. Example is what the Germans used in World War II to rapidly take over other countries. So intent-based leadership, being able to have distributed decision-making is great, but it's only as great as how the impact is made. How much impact you make and how you hold people accountable for making that impact as well. So yes, there's intention, and that's just the first part of building good outcome leadership. Here's our purpose, here's our objective, here's the standards and results by which we want you to meet it. But the full measure of whether you're actually a good leader or not is the other end, is the impact that you make. And this is your business reviews, really important, because the review is there to understand the impact and to learn whether, was my intention correct? Was my strategy correct? How do I tactically adjust? What's actually next best in order to achieve the outcome we want? And that's the thing orientated. I want to think about it's not about, it's actually about the impact you make and what people do with it.
We got a bit of lag there, Steph, but we got it in the end, so it's all right. So, let me bring up a question that somebody got for us as well. As escalates quick. How do you go about setting boundaries or constraints that enable people's autonomy?
So there's a number of different mechanisms. Criteria. One. So what is your definition? What is your value framework in your business? And then how do you use that value framework in your prioritization models? From the delivery team, definition of done is fantastic. when in products, when you're setting your strategy using OKRs, like your key result, these are all constraints to tell you the standard by which you want things to done. The other thing is actually visualizing it and mapping it out, and even being upfront around what's not clear. Inception, discovery sessions, when you're doing scope discovery, around the old-fashioned scope in, scope out posters that we do are fabulous, but often people walk out going, there's all this grey area. The key when you're outcome driven is to acknowledge the grey, but list it as questions. So how might we solve this? Do we need to actually solve this? Who's going to drill down the unknowns? That's another example of what's doing it. I also think around role boundaries and constraints, there needs to be more conversations, so accountability matrices, and also negotiating expectations. There's a lot of unspoken, unvisualized, unclarified expectations that happen in people's roles, often either because we're too scared or we don't think it's important to address. But this is where visual management and bringing visual management in is a really wonderful way as a leader to create conversation, healthy discourse to everyone align around what the boundary is. So I hope that helps, because it didn't say in what context it was.
No, it didn't. So thank you. Escalates quick. If there's not enough, let us know. Okay, so the thing about this is whenever you talk about leadership to leaders, they say, well, what do you know about leadership? Were you ever a leader? So it was interesting when we're chatting, you took a journey to become an outcome-driven leader yourself. So I think it's interesting for people to hear how you got there and how you formed these opinions, Steph.
Do you want the personal story or do you want the professional story?
Let's go the personal one, Steph. I always want to dig deep.
Yeah, awesome. And I think this is kind of important because leadership styles are determined by people's personalities. Personalities are determined by their conditioning and upbringing. There's a 1980, London, Oxford Street. It's December 23rd, a couple of days before Christmas. I know, I was a little kid and I was out shopping with my mum and my big sister, and it was packed. Like I'm a Queensland kid. We'd gone from Queensland to London. First time it snowed there for years. Like, amazing people everywhere. I had no idea around the IRA, so that's the Irish Republic, the terrorism, the threats that were going on. I'd lived on bases up to that point, but in a civilian environment, you never expect a bombing or a bomb threat. I'm there, it's packed, it's Christmas, everyone's shopping, bomb alarms go off. So there's a bomb threat in Suffrages, and we're downstairs, and the only way out is this small, narrow stairway up to Oxford Street. Crowd rushes towards the exit. Mum goes, sister goes, hold on. I lose contact. I get crushed up against the stair railway. And so it's cutting into me, and I still remember the pain. They say you don't remember pain, but at the point where you need to make a decision of what am I going to do, and I'm an Aussie kid, right? I'm practical. Like, grew up in the bush. You just make things work. So I jumped down the stairwell going, I need to breathe. Priority one. There's an exit, like a few meters away. I go up to the exit, and there's women that are walking out because it was the women's section. And the woman turns around, she looks at me and says, this is for staff only. And I was like, but I'm a kid. Like, like, what the hell is this stupidity going on? Anyway, someone picked me up, put me under their arm, walked me out. You go out, there's SWAT teams and blah, 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 and you hear your mother freaking out down the end. But the thing about that, in that situation, you've got plausible threat, you've got people going every which way, and my only point to safety, like I did what the system said, follow the exit, because the way that everyone went wasn't safe. And from that point, I've always not necessarily trusted the system or questioned the policies that are in place, because the person who wrote that policy probably never thought of that situation. And so from that moment, it's like, well, if I need to get somewhere and then I'm not happy with the path or the blocks that are in front of me, I will question it. I will find a way around it. I will solve it. And if you're on my team, I will do whatever it takes to get that team out. And I think in that's kind of where this love for agility came from, because agility is about growing outcomes despite adversity. It's about being able to problem solve rapidly and tactically adjust and keep going. So, yeah, and there's absolutely no reason that we can't use that kind of skill set in business. We keep talking about an agile, like we put Jeff Sutherland, who created Scrum, like on pedestals. We talk about OODA loop. And the thing about these things, these learning loops and cadences, they did come from military practices, but they weren't the first to do that. Because here's the thing, like business trade has been happening forever. To be human is to trade some sort of currency and value. And the way that we've grown business is through test, experience, and grow. So this whole thing about I need to achieve something, I don't necessarily have the right way of doing it, I'm going to get blocked, but I'm going to keep going. It's a wonderful trait to have if you want to grow in your career, because you will fail, you'll come up against failures, you will have people that will make you fail and don't want to help you, but that's okay. I mean, that's part of being human. So what? Get up and go again. So that's what's forged my love for agility and being outcome driven, despite the system and everything else.
All right. So then if we take that, we'll get a double barrel on this. So if we take that, how does that translate into the professional story? Because obviously, professionally, you've had to translate that into being a leader as well, professionally, and your experiences in that.
Yeah, definitely. Probably it's a wonderful, well, it was a fun story. It's a tough story. One of the businesses I work for, we bought a UK business, and part of growing the business, I mean, for those of you that work at Atlassian or global scale platforms, one strategy is to acquire other platforms, other software, integrate it into your main stack. But what happens when you make those decisions as a business, you need to grow rapidly, you need to buy them, you need to keep selling, you need to keep the customers going. And you have to make up decisions about, well, do I upgrade my legacy stack, or do we spend the money on going and getting another business, which will help our growth? You know, we all see it. Do I invest in my infrastructure? Do I add more features? And it kind of got to the point where the risk of maintaining the legacy stack was getting higher and higher and higher. And then one day there was an accident. It's a weird accident back in the days when you had servers, and someone tripped over the power cords and the backup switches that kept all the Oracle databases up. So we lost almost 15,000 customers in data in another country that didn't really want us there in the first place. How do you overcome such a critical public event rapidly? And the way that we did it is we got our engineering leads in the team, chief architect, we got our heads of quality in the team, heads of product, and we went, right, what's important? What have we got to do to get out of this? And what does it mean to do this well? And we basically created a backlog. And we looked at, well, what's most critical? Like if we don't do it, what's the cost of not doing it? And who is most critical in order to get greater coverage of recovery? Everyone had to come together, and we just decided, okay, we need to pair people up. Product, engineering, If then what we need to have is ops, front stack, back end stack. You guys, who wants to be accountable? We actually said, who wants to be accountable for getting the data streams back up? Who wants to be accountable for this? Who wants to be on this team? And everyone chose what they worked towards. And within 4 years, we had over 1,000 UK customers back up and running the XML standards. And funnily enough, we needed to improve a few features. In 4 weeks, we got everyone up and going. It was just looking at, we've got stuff that we've got to do, situation, how are we going to solve problems, and the other key question is, what do you need to make this happen quickly? And so that the team comes to you and they go, well, I need this software, I need this hardware, and I need this investment. I need this support. And by the way, can you get me a childcare? Because this is going to take a lot longer. And in that situation, and you see it in COVID, and you hear of people talking in COVID, we had this amazing focus, like we all pulled together to get it done. And I think Aussies are actually really good at pulling around a community when something goes wrong. But why does something have to go wrong? Why do we not value what's important, and why do we not value or share what's important in the day-to-day? Because the matter of the fact is what we do is important to someone, otherwise I wouldn't pay for it. So that situation led me down the path of, oh, this actually really works. Let's systematize it. And then we took it into the VCs. Then that started to influence how we did Agile and rolled it out to enterprises. And that's my story. And I think for a lot of us who have been in those situations where you've done great work with great people and you're in consulting, you're forever trying to recreate that for someone else.
Yeah.
And part of recreating that for someone else is part of the work that I do, and why I'm curious as to why people are still saying leadership's not helping, leadership's holding us back, management's holding us back. We don't have the management software to see, whether our investment is making a difference. And it's like, well, yeah, we've got to solve that.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so we're getting close to the end of time, but the thing that I want to do is, there'll be leaders watching this now. So if I'm a leader watching this, Steph, what are the 3 things I could go away right now and start doing to start the journey to outcome driven until I can get to you to help them?
There's plenty of things people can do for themselves. I think, what does winning actually mean to you? How do you measure success, and what does it mean? Not just what are the measures, but what does it actually mean? Because I think Jeff Gofield, did I say his name, who wrote the product strategy?
God help.
Thank you very much. He actually said it really well. The difference between outputs and outcomes is outputs we can count. Outcomes are often the behavioral changes that truly make a difference to the customers when they experience our products. And that's the first thing, is what are the outcomes you actually expect? What are the measures and what is the meaning? Because at the end of the day, yes, money matters, but how you do your business and how you lead your team matters as much as that money. And in fact, it's a mutually beneficial relationship. And we see it time and time again. Great leaders drive better revenue performance, better business outcomes, better engagement, and better value. That's the first thing I would recommend. Do you know the difference between your outputs and your outcomes? The things that you think you can't control, then start to identify them and build the alliances that you need in order to solve the cross-team, the cross-delivery, the cross-division functions. That's the first thing. Alliances make or break your success as well as a leader. And there's other things around it. That's probably a good starting point.
Perfect. Well, Steph, we're very right on the end of our time. What I would say is, how can people get in touch with you? How can people talk more about this? Just even to share the stories, because as you said, you want to share the stories. What's the platform?
Yeah, definitely. Anyone on this group, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Stephanie BySouth. There's only one other Stephanie BySouth in the world, which is great. I'm pretty sure you'll know when you get me. The other one, outcome-drivenleader.com. The team have just put up a front page, and we're essentially putting the hypothesis up there, and we're asking 2 key questions. As a leader, what are you struggling with in order to get your job done that you'd like to be solved? And as a team member, what would you like for your leader and to see or to stop your struggles in the workplace or theirs? Something like that.
We'll put that in the show notes so that you can find that if you're watching this, that you can actually interact with that. I think that's a great thing. So leaders who are watching this, please go there to outcomedriven.com. I got it. And contribute. This is something we really want to help you with. So look, Steph, fantastic having you on At Talking Remote. Too short a time, but it's been great to have you today. Those that are watching this, don't forget, like, subscribe, join us at remoteaf.co, press the community button, join us in lots of conversations like this, join the Teamcraft newsletter below, check out the details from Steph's outcome.driven and the things that we'll put in there for her. Steph, fantastic having you on At Talking Remote today.
All right, thank you very much, Tony, and looking forward to exploring it a bit